The old house stood at the corner of Maple Street, its weathered brick walls holding decades of memories within them. Sarah had inherited it from her grandmother 3 months ago, and with it came an unexpected journey that would change her understanding of life forever. Sarah was a successful corporate lawyer in her early 30s, always rushing from one meeting to another, her phone constantly buzzing with urgent emails and calls. She had planned to sell the house immediately. After all, what did she need with a 3-bedroom home filled with old furniture and fading photographs? Her modern apartment downtown was convenient, efficient, and perfectly suited to her fast-paced lifestyle. But something made her hesitate. Perhaps it was the way the morning sunlight filtered through the stained glass window in the hallway, casting colorful patterns on the wooden floor. Or maybe it was the scent of lavender that still lingered in the rooms, reminding her of her grandmother's gentle presence. One Saturday morning, instead of rushing to her office as usual, Sarah decided to spend the day at the house. She needed to sort through her grandmother's belongings anyway, a task she had been avoiding for weeks. As she unlocked the heavy oak door, she felt a strange sense of peace wash over her, something she hadn't experienced in years. The living room was exactly as she remembered it from her childhood visits. The floral couch sat against the wall, slightly faded but still inviting. Her grandmother's reading chair occupied its usual spot by the window, a worn bookmark still tucked inside a novel on the side table. Sarah picked up the book and smiled. Her grandmother had always been reading something, always learning, always curious about the world. Moving into the kitchen, Sarah noticed her grandmother's recipe box sitting on the counter. She opened it carefully, finding hundreds of handwritten cards, each one stained with years of use. Her grandmother had been an amazing cook, but Sarah had never learned. She was always too busy, always ordering takeout, always eating at her desk while reviewing case files. As she flipped through the recipes, a folded letter fell out. Sarah unfolded it carefully, recognizing her grandmother's elegant handwriting immediately. The letter was addressed to her. "My dearest Sarah," it began, "if you're reading this, it means I've gone on to whatever comes next, and you found your way to this house. I hope you'll forgive an old woman for one last lesson. This house isn't just walls and rooms, my dear. It's a teacher, if you're willing to be a student." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes as she continued reading. Her grandmother had written about each room in the house, about the lessons each space held, about the importance of slowing down and truly living. The letter ended with a simple request: stay in this house for 1 month, really live here. Let it teach you what I couldn't in the years we had together. Sarah wiped her tears and looked around the kitchen with new eyes. She decided to honor her grandmother's wish. The next day, she moved some of her belongings into the house, informing her colleagues that she would be working remotely for the next few weeks. The first few days were challenging. The house was quiet, almost too quiet for someone used to the constant hum of city life. There was no restaurant downstairs, no gym in the building, no doorman to collect her packages. She had to cook her own meals, maintain the garden, fix things that broke. But slowly, something began to shift inside her. In the mornings, Sarah found herself waking up with the sunrise instead of to the harsh sound of her alarm. She would make coffee in her grandmother's old percolator, the aroma filling the entire house in a way her instant coffee machine never could. She sat at the kitchen table, looking out at the small garden, watching birds flutter between the trees. There was no rush to check her emails, no anxiety about the day ahead. Just peace. She began cooking from her grandmother's recipe box. The first attempts were disasters. Burnt cookies, oversalted soup, bread that refused to rise. But Sarah persisted, and with each attempt, she improved. More importantly, she learned patience. She learned that good things take time, that mistakes are part of the process, that perfection isn't the goal, enjoyment is. The house had a small study where her grandmother used to paint. Sarah had always known her grandmother was artistic, but she never realized how talented she was. Dozens of canvases leaned against the walls, depicting landscapes, flowers, and portraits of family members. Sarah found an unfinished painting of herself as a child, sitting in the garden with a book. Beside the easel was another note. I never finished this because I was waiting for you to visit again. I wanted to capture your smile one more time. But life got busy, as it always does, and suddenly there was no more time. Don't wait, my darling. Create now. Express now. Live now. Sarah hadn't picked up a paintbrush since elementary school, but something compelled her to try. She set up the easel, squeezed some paint onto a palette, and just began. She wasn't good at it, not at all, but that wasn't the point. The act of creating, of expressing something from within herself, was liberating. For hours, she would lose herself in colors and brushstrokes, forgetting about billable hours and client meetings. The garden became another teacher. Sarah had never gardened in her life. She killed every houseplant she had ever owned. But her grandmother's garden needed care, and Sarah felt obligated to try. She found gardening books in the study, notes her grandmother had made about when to plant what, how to prune, when to water. Kneeling in the soil, Sarah discovered a meditative quality to gardening. The simple act of pulling weeds, of watering thirsty plants, of watching tiny seedlings grow into strong plants, taught her about nurturing and patience. She learned that growth cannot be rushed, that every living thing needs attention and care, including herself. The neighbors began to notice Sarah's presence. Mrs. Chun from next door brought over some tomato plants and shared gardening tips. Mr. Rodriguez across the street helped her fix a leaky faucet and told her stories about her grandmother's kindness over the years. The Thompson family invited her to their Sunday dinners. Sarah, who had lived anonymously in her apartment building for 5 years, was suddenly part of a community. She realized how isolated she had become in her pursuit of success. She had friends, of course, but they were mostly colleagues. Their conversations revolved around work, cases, promotions. Here people talked about their families, their hopes, their struggles. They helped each other without expecting anything in return. They celebrated small victories and supported each other through challenges. One evening, while sitting in her grandmother's reading chair, Sarah found herself thinking about her life. She had achieved everything she thought she wanted. A prestigious job, a nice apartment, financial security. But she felt empty. She worked 70-hour weeks, had no hobbies, barely saw her family, and couldn't remember the last time she had truly laughed or felt joy. The house was showing her a different way to live, not slower necessarily, but more intentional, more connected, more alive. As the month progressed, Sarah began making changes. She started taking actual lunch breaks, eating meals she had prepared herself instead of wolfing down sandwiches at her desk. She scheduled regular calls with her parents and siblings, really talking to them instead of rushing through obligatory check-ins. She joined a local book club and a community garden project. She even started saying no to cases that didn't align with her values, something she would never have done before. The house had a music room with an old piano. Sarah had taken lessons as a child but quit when she got too busy with school. Her grandmother's note here read, "Music is the language of the soul. Don't forget how to speak it." Sarah began playing again. Her fingers were rusty and she stumbled through simple pieces she had once played flawlessly. But gradually, muscle memory returned, and with it, a joy she had forgotten existed. She would play for hours, losing herself in melodies, feeling emotions she had suppressed for years. One night, Sarah hosted a dinner party at the house. She invited her new neighbors and some friends from the city. She cooked a meal from her grandmother's recipes, set the table with her grandmother's china, and put flowers from the garden in a vase as a centerpiece. The evening was filled with laughter, good conversation, and genuine connection. As Sarah looked around the table at the smiling faces, she felt a profound sense of belonging. Her friends from the city were surprised by the change in her. They said she seemed lighter, happier, more present. They wanted to know her secret. Sarah simply smiled and said she had learned to slow down, to appreciate the simple things, to invest in relationships and experiences rather than just her career. As the month drew to a close, Sarah faced a decision. She could return to her old life, sell the house, and go back to her routine, or she could make a real change. The choice seemed obvious now. Sarah decided to keep the house and make it her home. She didn't quit her job, but she renegotiated her workload and started working from home several days a week. She took on less demanding cases that allowed her to have a life outside of work. She continued cooking, gardening, painting, and playing piano. She stayed involved in her community, building relationships that enriched her life in ways she never expected. The house had taught her that success isn't measured solely by professional achievements or financial wealth. True richness comes from relationships, from creativity, from connection to community, from taking time to appreciate beauty, from learning and growing, from being present in each moment. Sarah understood now why her grandmother had left her this house. It wasn't about the property itself. It was about the life it represented, the values it embodied, the lessons it could teach. Her grandmother had lived a full, meaningful life in this house, and she wanted Sarah to discover that same fulfillment. Months later, Sarah would stand in that same kitchen, looking out at the garden she now tended with love, and feel grateful. Grateful for the inheritance that was much more than a house. Grateful for a grandmother wise enough to teach her one last lesson. Grateful for the reminder that the best things in life, the things that truly matter, cannot be rushed or bought. They must be cultivated, nurtured, and appreciated. The old house on Maple Street continued to stand, its weathered brick walls now holding new memories, new laughter, new life. And within those walls, Sarah had found not just a home, but herself. She had learned that sometimes you have to slow down to truly move forward, that the simplest moments can hold the deepest meaning, and that a life well lived is measured not by how much you achieve, but by how fully you love, create, and connect with the world around you. This was the lesson her grandmother had wanted her to learn, and the house had been the perfect teacher.